to the Efed Podcast, the podcast exploring our fantasy wrestling hobby, where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real. Welcome back to another edition of the Efed Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Mikey Unlikely, and I'm joined by Brian, the producer of the show. Brian, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. I was doing a little bit better last week when I thought I was co-hosting with Howard Finkel, but you work with what you got. Make chicken salad out of chicken shit, and you move on.
That's right. Yeah, maybe Howard will make sporadic appearances in the show. So, Brian, today we're joined on the interview by Jamar. Jamar is the handler of Sean XXX Stevens, formerly of the FWO, the CSWA, Empire Pro Wrestling, the CWL, and much more.
Much more.
He's a legend of the game, and it was really fun talking to him. We got to video chat, and you guys will get to hear what we talked about.
But not see, because you're not that special.
No, you don't get to see us. Unfortunately, I don't record that much.
Onlyfans.com/
Efed Podcast. No, I'm kidding. This week on the Question of the Week, you guys came out in droves for this one. Really excited to see their interaction both on Twitter and in the Discord. Question of the Week: if you, the handler, wrote an autobiography about your time in Efedding, what would it be titled? Brian, what do you think?
For me, I'd have to go with Never Have Your Dog Stuffed.
All right.
I handled K9 for a long time.
There you go. And he's been stuffed since then.
Hey, stuffed, stuck, never achieved anything. Sure. What about you?
Well, just putting it out there, at DEF CON, I expect Scott Douglas to be stuffed, stuck, and put away too. Heyo, if I have it my way.
Man, I mean, damn. That's just
cold. Cold-blooded.
Incorrect. And cold, but yes, both. But I've heard it both ways.
I've heard it both ways. DefianceWrestling.com. All right, guys, the autobiography. Oh, my autobiography would be An Unlikely Scenario, My Time in Efedding.
Oh, very nice.
There you go. Basically, that's what I title every first RP when I enter a Fed.
Going on the same steez where I stole my title from, another book by the same author. I think Mikey Unlikely's actually would be Things I Overheard While Talking to Myself.
There you go. Everybody was listening, Brian. Don't worry. Of course, you guys, you can find the show on at the Efed Podcast on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. You can search the Efed Podcast. It will be the first thing that pops up. Of course, over on patreon.com/Efed Podcast, you can find our Patreon if you want to support the show. Of course, it is a free podcast, but we appreciate your support. And finally, efedpodcast.com. And of course, our other venture, Brian. How can we forget?
Oh, how could we?
I'm wearing one right now. Check it out. efedtees.com. Your number one source, Efed merchandise.
.com merchandise.
Jake loves that bit. I tell you, he really loves it.
I was on a delay there.
I like it. Hey, whatever we can do to drive Jake nuts. Wow, that's a tongue twister. Drive Jake nuts.
Drive Jake nuts. Drive
there
nuts,
you go.
Jake. Yep.
All right, guys. We appreciate you tuning in for this episode 66. We've come this far. It is March Madness.
Ooh.
We've got Jamar on the show, a legend in the game. I'm excited to get into the interview. But first, here's a word from our sponsors. The Efed Podcast is a totally free podcast that drops each and every single week for your e-wrestling ears on a multitude of apps. If you'd like to support the show, however, the best way to do so is over at patreon.com/Efed Podcast. For as little as $3 a month, you can support both Brian and myself as we crank out more e-wrestling content with perks such as early releases and special Discord designations And if that's not enough EW action for you, jump up to the $10 a month tier and you can get a free EWT's t-shirt design early and ad-free editions of the show, as well as access to our monthly Q&As, bad graps, and more. And if you'd like to be a sponsor on the show and get your ad played, the best way to do that is the sponsor level on Patreon, with all of the previous perks, plus weekly commercials on the show. Check it out over at patreon.com/Efed Podcast. We greatly appreciate your consideration.
Occupy Pro Wrestling, putting the smart back into smart mark since 2012, with a community on Discord and message boards, merchandise, a weekly vodcast on Twitch, and much more. Check out everything from us and our site partners at OccupyProWrestling.com.
Efed Tees, the #1 source for Efed merchandise, offering custom merchandise made for your wrestler, tag team, stable, or Efed. Whether you want a high-quality t-shirt, face mask, hoodie, hat, it doesn't matter. We can help you out over at EfedTees.com. Do you have a custom logo for your wrestler? Awesome. We're going to slap it on a shirt and help you out real fast. If not, no problem at all. We have a custom design service too. You can work with a graphic artist to get the perfect design made for your character. Go on over to EWTees.com and click on Want a Shirt to get your shirt started. EfedTees.com.
Defiance, an angle-fed boasting 8 years of continuous fantasy wrestling. Defiance offers opportunities for original characters, micros, a standalone website utilizing Backstage 3 script, and a forum hosted on the long-running FWrestling.com, as well as a roster full of some of the most experienced writers in the game. Come see for yourself at DefianceWrestling.com. That's DefianceWrestling.com.
All right, guys, time for the Efed Podcast question of the week. This week, it's this one was suggested to us by Tone, so shout out to Tone.
With 8 A's.
If you, the handler, wrote an autobiography about your time in Efeding, what would it be called? First, on the Discord channel, it's the Texas Tornado, Brian.
Oh, Tone.
Answering his own question.
Answer his own question first up. Beer and Efed Eding, ellipses, by Tone. Spelled wrong on purpose.
Of course.
He's 3 A's short.
If you're drinking beer, then, you know.
Yeah, you pop a random R in there, here and there, yeah.
Up next is MDG. That's Warren. Check out Modern Day Gladiators over at Drive-Thru RPG.
Warren says, I did this for free? ? A retrospective in 5 parts. That'd be the subtitle.
There you go. This is part 1. If I know Warren, he's writing long stories, Brian.
Indeed. Much like my phone calls with him. They go way longer than they're ever intended. I try to keep them short, and it doesn't happen.
Check out Warren's interview previously on the Efed Podcast.
Great interview. Warren's a great guy. If you ever get a chance to work with him, go for it.
Up next is Brock.
Things I did while drunk, a very borked story.
I can get with it.
More misspelling humor. Hey,
everybody's drunk and writing wrestling. I'm down with that.
Hey-o.
It's kind of the Atomic Dropcast.
Pretty much. In a nutshell.
Up next is Bobo, Bobby Dean.
Disclaimer by Bobby Dean.
That's why the Egg Bandits episode will never air on the Efed Podcast.
I would love it if it was if the title wasn't disclaimer, then and also the book was by Bobby Dean. But if the title was disclaimer by Bobby Dean, so then on the book it would have to also say by Bobby Dean. It's like disclaimer by Bobby Dean, by Bobby Dean.
Yes, written by Bobby Dean. EWT's best customer, it's Meg.
Megan's Efed Journey retrospective, aka what the fuck did I get myself into?
Welcome to Efeding.
That's a pretty damn good one. I ain't gonna lie.
John Thompson at TW Combat is up next.
He is indeed, and hold on, I gotta zoom in. He is indeed, he says, who the hell is that? The story of a man who couldn't make up his mind. Economy of
Great new
words,
characters.
John. Maybe just call it indecisive. He lends a little bit of explanation behind the title. I never could stay interested in one character throughout my 2001 to 2012 run, but never had time for multiple characters. So even though I had like a 6-year run in the XWF, hardly anybody knows who I am.
I had the same deal early on in my career. It's interesting how many people I talked to on the Efed podcast, and they've played the same character since they started. Like it's the same guy. Maybe his nickname's changed, maybe the character's changed, evolved over time, but it's one guy, and they play other characters dabbingly, but not necessarily all the time. And for me, it was the opposite. At first, I couldn't land on a character. Every 6 months, I was someone new, and then finally, it took until 2014 or 13 for me to land on Mikey Unlikely and it to be a thing.
Well, given that, the question is premise written by the handler, I feel like John's book especially should be called, and given what he has said, I feel like his book especially should be called In John Nito.
Word puns. I see. Ignore everything he said and just use his name. I like that.
Well, I mean, but it's also incognito. No one knows who he is. You know what I mean? It fits. It's simpatico.
It is. It's well-rounded, Brian. I like your answer.
Well-rounded, well-drunk. Same thing.
Joe's up next at Capacity.
How I got fired from Defiance.
We joke on every episode how he's going to get fired, but he's the only one who thinks we're joking.
Well, the funny thing, too, is the original joke got cut. But no, Capacity's actual answer, modern wrestling bores me, so I did it myself.
There you go.
I think
accurate.
I think we could roll that into how I got fired from Defiance, I did it to myself.
See? Modern Defiance wrestling bores me.
And I did
it myself. I did it to myself. There you go. I like it. Little twist on words. All right. Up next is That Masked Guy.
A Tiger's Tale, or how I came to accept being a soulless ginger.
Self-harsh.
Very, very much so.
Up next is, I'll take number 5. I'm humble. It's Juice.
10,000 ways to piss people off, stress yourself out, and lose all your friends. A retrospective.
I don't know where he came up with that answer.
It's kind of out of nowhere. I mean, I don't think he has any kind of reputation for, being mad or anything.
I've made and lost a lot of friends in Efed, Brian.
There you go.
One drove away on a bus.
Oh, never go full bus.
Love and peace. That's good. It's Jake.
Infinite jest.
Simple, effective, gets the point across. Jake's a great comedy writer.
Very ethereal, but it works.
Up next is Highlander 4-H is Ron Hall McDonald.
Panera Bread and how I created my industry next to it. Moving on. Next up. No, Ron says 1. Of course you'd have 2, Ron. 1, I couldn't make this shit up if I tried.
The Lucha Mask story.
Number 2, my made-up life in a made-up hobby and my Lucha Mask Emporium.
Ron Hall McDonald, everybody. You gotta love him.
Shout out to Ron. We like to give him shit.
He's a cool dude, though. Up next is Alex Smiley with a Z for extreme.
Very 90s, Alex. Pretending to wrestle on the internet, my life as a creative writing enthusiast.
Oh, there you go. That appeals to more than just e-wrestling people.
Indeed. He's trying to get a bestseller list.
He is, and he's good at that kind of thing.
That Audible bestseller list.
Up next is Kevin R.
The first 100,000 words were free, : you have to pay for these.
Is that why he hasn't written anything in 10,000 years?
My mind goes directly to he's got a follow-up book in mind, and that book is called These Nuts.
Oh, Flying Frenchie for everyone out there. He recently joined a Fed that might be starting up soon.
Oh, how about that? Intrigue.
Intrigue. Mystery. Up next is Irwin 109.
Beyond the Chat with the tagline, if we told you there was planning involved, you wouldn't believe us.
That's the motto of most Angle Feds, I think.
I think the motto of most Angle Feds would be, if we told you there was planning involved, we'd be lying.
There you go. Shout out to Irwin. He's an upcoming guest on the Efed Podcast over at New Extremes Wrestling.
Oh.
Vodka Marie is coming up next, Brian.
Hello, God. It's me. Please don't let my friends and family find out about this.
Everyone hides e-fedding from their friends, their family, their pets, everything.
That doesn't sound like it's about this.
Oh, snap.
Ew.
Shout out to Vodka Marie. Good follow on Twitter.
Indeed. Funny answer, too.
At MJ, Shoot and Defiance is up next.
Efed Wars, : episode 4. There is no hope because I'm still doing this shit. Fair enough.
I like that you drop the colon and the dash and everything else, and I would just be like, Efed Wars, episode 4. And on the Twitter side of things, Brian, we're going over to the Twitter side at the Efed Podcast. Up first is at Sky's Song. It's Renee, Lil Psycho.
And her book would be titled Lil Psycho's Wild Adventures.
Sounds appropriate.
Sounds more like a Saturday morning cartoon, but I'm with it.
Lil Psycho's Wild Adventures. What kind of cartoons are you watching, Brian?
Well, let's not get into that. We got a whole podcast to do here.
All right, up next is at Calloweezy 2220. It's Calloway.
I've been threatening to write How I Got My Angle, : the Stephen Calloway story for about a decade.
Well, don't think about it, be about it.
You know what I'm saying? Is you bout it? Like Master P in circa really terrible times in WCW?
Buy Calloway's book. Up next is at Darren A. Matthews.
Everybody Hates Zion, : the true life story of Darren Zion.
Check out Zion's interview. I think it was 63.
Yes, indeed. He says this title is very Chris Rock inspired.
Everybody hates Zion, just like everybody hates Chris.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like an echo in here.
Are we working on a delay?
Delay at Real Sean Cage. It's Sean Cage.
/ pipe bomb, : the time I took a shit in e-wrestling.
Uh-oh. It's time for me to teach you a little EFED lesson, Brian. Are you ready?
Ooh.
/ on Twitter is equal to OOC.
Counterpoint. No, it's not.
Well said. Up next is Cross Rakoba.
Remember when pictures won matches? ? That's number 1. Number 2.
That's one option, yeah.
This angel fire burns. You should get that checked out.
MIDI edition.
Number 3. What do you mean your guy is 7 feet tall and does a dragon rana?
450 splash.
It's not wrong.
A 450 moonsault. What do you think about that, Brian?
Ooh. Oh, wait, what?
I saw recently someone asked me, how can someone's move be a shooting star press senton? I'm like, it's a 1.5, dude. And I found some crazy video of like Paul London or somebody in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla doing it.
Counterpoint. No, it's not.
Not in classic wrestling, anyway.
Nah, you know what, with the 360s, 450s, double back, who knows? And now everything's a suicida. I don't know anymore. Just, you know what? If you want to jump off of something, just fucking jump off it. Make it a cliff, please.
Make it like New Jack style, where you just jump off and lean your body into it.
Yeah, just chest first.
With your chest. Up next is R.L. Edgar 1.
All right, guys. Jump off that balcony with your chest.
Up next is R.L. Edgar 1.
Letters to a young Efeder.
There you go.
I'm uncomfortable with that one.
He means himself, Brian. Come on.
Regardless.
Still uncomfortable. All right. Up next, at Project_EMI, it's Emi Hirota.
I should have focused better in school. Boy, howdy. Shouldn't we all?
No doubt. At JVD Rooster, it's the old man.
What the hell were you thinking? Dash my 27 years in Efeding, ellipses, and counting.
Ellipses. I like you throwing that in.
That's gonna be the new .com. Like ellipses.
Ellipses. I use ellipses so much in my role plays.
My big pet peeve of mine is an ellipses should be 3 dots, and commonly people use more than 3 dots.
It's always 3 dots. Always 3 dots. 1, 2, 3. Up next is at SVO Las Vegas.
1,000 retirements and counting by John Page.
There he is. It's my guy. Yeah, he's always SVO. It's around, then it's not. And then he's around, then he's not.
I mean, hey, stop being such an underachiever. Go for 1,001. You know what I mean?
Up next is at Hope Lissy. It's Lissy Hope.
/ Ha! I read this question wrong and thought it about my character. Ellipses. Living vicariously through the successes of a 135-pound figment of my imagination.
Not bad.
It's a long-ass title.
Hey, if there's anything we can say about E-Fetters, is that we write everything out in long form.
Yeah. Economy of words is normally lost on E-Fetters for sure.
Up next is Burning Media 1. It's James Edwards.
James says his title would be Keep Your Head Down and Keep Writing. It's a motivational book, obviously.
Obvs.
Totally obvs.
Up next is at Scoot Stuvens.
Oh, Jesus.
The legend.
Is this what we've come to?
He's a big fan of the show.
New place in this Hobbit.
No place in this Hobbit.
It's obviously a book about sexual intercourse with Lord of the Ring characters, if I'm not mistaken.
Not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, it's a copy and paste job.
Oh.
New place in this Hobbit.
New,
I like it.
New place. New place. New place.
I think we need that new Scoot Stuvens shirt over at efedtees.com. I got the Stuver image, so we can get it done.
Let's do it.
Up next is at Unleash the Dragon. It's Mark the Dragon Cross.
Oh, the Dragon. How do I long this out to 8,000 words? Question mark.
Don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Not.
Unless you're writing a book.
That's a weird it's a weird how do I long this out?
No, but I get it though. Like, you know, I've been writing role plays and been at 2,000 words and like, well, I've got nothing left.
The syntax of that sentence is almost as complexing as no place in this Hobbit.
Welcome to the E-Grammar Podcast. I'm your co-host, Mikey. This is your host, Brian.
This is your host, Jim Grammar Cornett.
All right, up next is Bane_Mac. It's Mac Bane.
The addiction I couldn't shake.
Fair enough. I've come back to it many times.
Solid title, given that most addictions, when you quit them, make you shake.
Oh, there you go. And not too long for a book cover.
Oh, not too long at all.
Up next is at QOTNTW. It's Amelia Hart's.
How I made an entire Fed hate me in less than 4 months. Something along those lines. It took you 4 months? Amateur hour, Amelia. Step your game up.
Work smarter, not harder. Am I right?
Yeah. There are people out here who do that shit in 4 days.
It's real easy to make a simple mistake and everybody turns on you.
100%. This is not the most forgiving bunch.
Ask the Atomic Dropcast.
Hello.
Up next is, I don't know you're at, but it's your mainstream world heavyweight champion.
What were you thinking, comma, dumbass, exclamation point, question mark.
Come on, Brian. At Whammy Bar is up next. It's Griffin Hawkins, good friend of the show.
See? Hashtag OOC. None of that / nonsense. Y'all gotta stop making stuff up, Twitter. You already took over hashtag. Let's be honest. That's a pound sign. We all know that's a pound sign. Pick up a phone. What is it? It's a pound sign.
I don't think people know what a pound sign is anymore, Brian.
I'll pound them to know what a pound sign is.
Hashtag 911.
Ooh. Griffin Hawkins says, rock and role play.
Nice, short, to the point. I like it.
Yeah, but I feel like that needs to be like right after that.
Yeah. How do you write that out, Brian? Spell that, Mr. Grammar.
B wow N A L.
Wow. Yeah. It's French. Okay, moving on.
Indeed.
Up next is Uncle Jay. It's at OCW Fed. It's our boy Jason OC Dub.
OC Dub. He says, "My Empire of Dirt" by JCS.
There he is. Great interview. Check him out. The OCW Fed episode on the Efed Podcast.
OC Dub.
At Atara Themis.
Glutton for punishment, asking keyboard warriors to make me cry. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm with that one. I like that. Up next is Doc XWF.
I like this one too. It's real to us, the story of my stories. Solid.
Yeah, that's clever. At Sean_Warstein. Never heard of this guy.
Woo, who is this? Boredom and the very weird way I temporarily solved it.
Yo, if you're bored, I'll solve it.
Check out the Efed story while the heel revolves it.
Resolves it?
Yeah.
All right, we fail.
Multiple choice.
At Mooncraft Witch. Oh, he's hooked. He demands a copy of Fuzz's book.
Oh, Sean Warstein's Fuzz?
Yeah, that's Fuzz.
All right, I don't ever get to say this, so I'll say it. Brian, cut that out.
Brian, I love the way you lie. All right, moving on. On Twitter is Imagine My Venom. It's the queen of the EWC.
Her title is Dick Pics and Jewelry, my life as a female E-Feder. Fair enough.
Yeah, can't argue that one. At User Poets, it's Pete.
I call foul. He's already written a book. Disqualified.
Pete's disqualified. He's out of here. Kick him out, Ralph.
Buy Pete's book.
Buy Pete's book. One Chance, Legend of Valerian's Garden, over on Amazon.
If Pete did write a book as a handler about his time in E-Feding, it would be titled, No, That's My Old Entrance Music. I see you.
Yeah, that's a good one. Or here, another good one would be, should I change my pick base, guys?
Or as Clay Bird suggests in a reply, buy my other book.
Ooh, on point.
That's super on point.
Up next is at Tweets by Tony 11. It's the cringeworthy recovering dickhead.
Jesus. Okay. I have a few ideas for your title already. Like, I hate myself. Thank my weed plug for getting me into this shit.
I mean,
thanks.
That'd be cool.
His weed plug.
Thank you. At James Raven XWF.
It sounded better in my head. Everything does.
Yes. It's not even good on paper. I like that.
Especially agreeing to co-host with Mikey on the Efed podcast.
I'm so glad you guys answered this week's Efed podcast question of the week. This was a really fun one. Brian and I had a lot of fun reading your answers, and I'm excited that we got so much interaction. Hope you guys join us next week for the next question of the week. It's up on Twitter right now. So head on over there at the Efed Podcast and drop your answer in the comments or on the Discord in the hashtag question of the week.
Yeah, hashtag / whatever.
#.
And if you are looking to hear anything Efed Podcast related that has more references to colon than this, then we suggest you go on over to the Patreon and get even the lowest subscription and check out the Patreon exclusive interview between Mikey Unlikely and the Egg Bandits.
The Egg Bandits coming soon to the Patreon. Patreon.com/Efed Podcast.
Emphasis on coming.
Hello, this is Dave, the co-owner of 5bwrestling.com or 5 Bros Wrestling, and you are listening to the Efed Podcast.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Efed Podcast interview series. Today, I'm joined by Jamar. Jamar is the handler of Sean XXX Stevens, formerly of the FWO, the CWL, EPW, and the CSWA. Guys, welcome Jamar to the show. Jamar, how you doing? Thanks for taking the time, buddy.
I am fantastic. And yourself, thank you for having me.
I'm doing great. I'm having a nice beer. The kids are in bed, so here we are.
That sounds like a good idea. I should have done that. I don't have anything. The refrigerator's empty. I'm depleted.
There you go.
But yeah, as I was telling you, it's my daughter's birthday, everybody. So I'm souped up on, I'm on a sugar rush. I have a lot of birthday cake inside of me right now. So I might get a little crazy.
Perfect. So. That's what we're looking for. No. But no, thanks for joining the show, man. Let's get into, how did you first get into pro wrestling? When did you become a fan?
Oh, man. So I don't know everybody else's story, but my story is a little different. I have family that stems, so we go back to North Carolina and the South Carolina area. And so I had a favorite uncle. His name was Uncle Mike. And for as long as I've known him, he's been in a wheelchair. And so he would always call me his little man. My little man, when's my little man coming to town? Because I'm from the D.C., Maryland area, and that's about a 4 or 5 hour drive.
Yeah.
So whenever I would go, he would always take me to see some NWA. And I just thought he was the coolest guy in the world because he had this wheelchair. I didn't really fully understand his limitations at that time, but he would always say, let's roll to the front. And even though we had like what would be, I guess, what we would equate to nosebleed seats, we always would ride to the front. And I would just stand beside him and I get to see Ric Flair and Sting. And it was so amazing to me at the time, too. And just like even having this conversation, it's bringing back so many memories. Sting beat Ric Flair with a schoolboy. And I remember thinking as a kid, he never beats him on TV. How did this happen? And so that's how it started for me. Just a favorite uncle of mine. He introduced me to wrestling. He passed away before I was a teen, and it was something that I stuck with because it reminded me of him. So
that's awesome. That's a great intro story. So who were some of your favorite wrestlers early on that really caught your eye and drew you in?
So I think, now that I'm a little bit more into it and I understand what a good match is and I understand 5-star matches and things like that, it's almost embarrassing to say that I think, my favorite wrestler back in the day was Hulk Hogan for the obvious reasons, right?
Yeah, no, he's perfect.
Red and yellow.
Exciting. Eat your vitamins, say your prayers.
Absolutely. And I ate him and I said those prayers and I just believed everything that he said. And so then later on it changed to the Ultimate Warrior, right? Not a good worker, but, you think about it and it's like, oh, my God, he was so exciting. So many colors. He had the tassels on his arms. He had the, I used to wash my face with Noxzema, and I would like try to like put it on my face in the design of the Ultimate Warrior.
Wear the
So I
mask,
think exactly. And so I think more than anything, I chased excitement back then.
So it was all about the charisma and the exciting characters. That's
Absolutely.
awesome. And then you got to see it live early on in your life, which is really cool too.
Absolutely. And I just couldn't get enough of it. It was just one of those things where I don't even remember the name of all of the federations, but it was still during the territory era. And so I could turn to channel 20 on my TV, and then I remember the Lightning Kid, X-Pac, before he was actually the 1-2-3 Kid. And so when all these guys that I would watch, because if it was wrestling, I'm watching it. I don't care who it is. I don't care if I don't know the person. I don't care if I don't know the federation. It is what it is. Wrestling's on. Everything else has to stop. And so I remember, seeing all these guys transition to WWE or WWF back then, and I'd be like, I know him. And so they would, lose. And I'm like, hold on, I saw this guy in another federation. And this is back when before I knew that it was a word. So, yeah, I loved wrestling. I ate, slept, I breathed it. I did everything except join.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great story. And as a kid, I mean, I was the same way. I believed it. I felt it. I remember driving down to my dad's van, and he had one of those little black and white TVs in his van. And I see WCW, and I've never seen it before. I'm just like, I don't care who this is. I want to watch it.
Awesome.
That's good stuff. So
thank you.
Tell me about what you watch wrestling now. Have you continued on with it throughout the years?
I think I will in some form or fashion always watch wrestling.
Okay.
Now, am I able to get through an entire episode with me pushing 40 now? No.
Yeah.
But, I always tape it. I always record it. And so what I'll do is I'll watch a little bit here, a little bit there. I'm always aware of what the current storylines are. For whatever reason, I'm not so much into the AEW thing, only because I've seen different federations come and go, or different promotions, I should say. And I think, I am who I am.
Yeah.
WWE guy.
You've been with them forever.
I've been with them forever. I'll glance in opposite directions. I love the NXT stuff, but it's just something about good old fashioned WWE, even though it's not the same. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of my childhood.
Yeah.
So yes, to answer your question in my long-winded way, I absolutely watch wrestling to this day. My fiance watches it too. She never watched it before.
There you go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So top 4 favorite wrestlers, Mount Rushmore. Give them to me.
Mount Rushmore, it would have to be Flair.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, I began to appreciate Ric Flair a little bit later on in life. I'm ashamed to say it, but it is what it is. Bret was my guy for at least a decade. Bret lost as a kid. I had a bad day at school the next day. Like, I still remember to this day when Bret lost the title to Yokozuna at WrestleMania 9. And that I was devastated. And I hated Hulk Hogan for stealing his thunder. So I would say Flair, Bret, then I would have to go to The Rock, because it's just, I remember being in college and just, it was during, I think it was like the Attitude Era, a little shortly after. And I remember people just gathering in our dorm rooms to watch wrestling. I had never seen anything like that, because once upon a time, wrestling was like this little fraternity of people. People didn't understand us. They thought we were weird or whatever, right? And so, just to see people coming in my dorm just because it was like Monday, it was awesome. So I would say The Rock is number 3, and 4, Mount Rushmore, you got to give it to Cena.
John Cena, there you go.
You got to give it to Cena. I mean, not the greatest worker. And I think I'm in the minority. I think he works. I think he looks a little stiff sometimes, but I think he ended up being a great worker. And he knew how to tell a story. And this guy got emotion that I've never experienced. I went to the WrestleMania where he went against The Rock for the first time once in a lifetime. I went to the one after that as well. But, just being in that arena and just hearing, or that stadium, I should say, and hearing how loud it was in Miami, that was the loudest reaction I've ever been around in my life. So you have to give it to Cena for, the Make-A-Wishes, the matches, the longevity. I mean, just being the face, that's a stressful job. And he did it, and he did it very well.
It's hard to argue. And he ended up, I think, getting better as he got older and
absolutely
doing a lot better, like you said, telling stories, selling, and doing all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about e-fedding. How did you find this weird world of e-fedding?
Ooh, okay. So again, at the point that I got my first summer job, I was working for this real fancy company in Arlington, Virginia. First of all, I live in like the hood at this point in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my friends never knew anything about e-fetting or anything. So I had got this fancy job because my mom worked for the federal government. She knew a guy who said, you know what? I love you so much that what I'm going to do is I'm going to give your son a job. So I get this internship and I'm just sitting there in front of a computer and I don't know what in the hell I'm doing. I don't know. I'm stealing money, I guess. I don't know. My whole day consisted of me just like surfing online. And this was during a time where I didn't have so much online access at home. I had the regular dial up, but it was just so slow that you didn't really want to do anything.
Yeah.
At this company, we had a server and a network and whatever, a firewall, and everything was just so fast. And it was just like, wow, it amazed me. So I really just started playing around on my computer when I was supposed to be doing work. And because I loved the WWF so much, I was looking up Shawn Michaels. He was my guy at the time. And I had a lot of guys, by the way. Yeah, I don't think I was loyal at all. Anyway, back to the story. And so I was looking up Shawn Michaels and I stumbled on a Fed and I don't know the name of it. But it was guys writing as my favorite wrestlers. And so I found myself reading the role plays, which I didn't even know what they were at the time, but I was reading them as my favorite wrestlers. And I was like, wow, I want to do that. I want to be a part of that. And so upon seeing that, I just started searching. And so then I started realizing that there were a lot of like little federations out there. And I was like, oh, wow, I got to create somebody. And so that's how I got into it. I essentially just was bullshitting at work, man. And I stumbled on it. And it was just like the greatest thing ever. I felt like I was watching wrestling. And it made me want to be a part of it.
So you found real wrestler feds at first, role play feds. And,
yes.
But you didn't join one right away. Instead, you decided, hey, I want to create a character.
I'm going to create. Well, I said I wanted to search and I wanted to like learn more about it. One thing about me is I'm a perfectionist. And I'm super competitive. And so once I saw that it was a competition thing, I was like, oh, wow, I got to really be good at this. And so I started doing like research. And so I stumbled on a Fed called HEW, Hardcore Extreme Wrestling. And so that's actually where I met Pete Russo. I met Andy Bloxham. He handled the character Zero. I think he was a little ahead of his time. My good friend Paul Brisbane, just a lot of guys who ended up making a name for themselves in bigger federations. And so I went there and I had this character and his name was Ecstasy and he was based off of the drug. And it was just not that clever, but it was cool. He was like a little my version of Shawn Michaels. I had heard he was doing drugs, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was just like this blonde haired, blue eyed guy. If I can go a little bit into behind that story, that was at a time where in my neighborhood, it was like a lot of bad things that were going on. So my friends knew me as the athlete, the boxer, the guy who was in the midst of everything that they were doing, but they did not know this other side of me where I didn't necessarily want to tell them because I didn't know if they were going to understand it or they weren't going to, or if they were going to laugh or whatever. So dealing with what I dealt with in my neighborhood, like people getting shot, friends dying, this gave me an escape. So I created this character that was the exact opposite of who I am. I'm not this guy. I'm not charismatic. I don't think I'm the ugliest guy in the world, but I'm not this chick magnet. You know what I mean? And so it allowed me to escape my regular day-to-day life of walking outside and not knowing if somebody was going to shoot.
Yeah. Or
if a friend was going to die. And it allowed me to just like escape. And so in this weird way, I had this debt of gratitude that I owe to the whole e-fetting world because it kept me inside in a lot of situations where, I would have been with certain friends who ended up not surviving.
Yeah, you could have ended up in a much worse situation had you not been e-fetting.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
That's great that everybody uses e-fetting as an escape for something. I think that it's a form of throwing yourself into a character, throwing yourself into something. And oftentimes people say, you take yourself and you turn it up to 11. In this case, you went the opposite direction and you wanted to be something different than what you were. Why is that?
Absolutely. Again, I'm a Pisces, and so the more that I learn about, your signs and things of that nature, we're dreamers. We have these vivid imaginations. I remember being grounded from school and, because I didn't do well in the class and my mom and dad would take the TV out of my room and I would be like, I don't care. I'll just read this book. I can read this book and I visualize everything that's going on. It's just, it doesn't matter to me. And so for me, it just allowed me to escape. It allowed me to be somebody else. It allowed me to see the world in ways that I wasn't able to see it at that given point in time in my life. And so, and also, I met some really cool people. They weren't cool at first because we were all in character all the time and they used to kick my character's ass week after week. But I met some really cool people that are my friends that I've actually bonded with. So that's why I joined and that's why I stuck, because it's a community. And, when you feel like people don't understand you in the real world, it's pretty awesome to be able to find people that do. Yeah. I was tired of being, I would walk out my door and I would have to be tough and I would have to put my chest out and have to act a certain way and I would have to speak with a certain, accent or slang. And so here I got to be Jamar.
You have to be yourself.
Be myself. Yep.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So talk about those first role plays. How bad were they?
Horrible. They were horrible. They were horrible. I completely copied off of what I saw on TV because, I saw these other real character feds where people got to be the real wrestlers. And so, again, my guy was a Shawn Michaels carbon copy. So, I was just like, why? Because I can. Everything that he said is what I did. Yeah. And you couldn't tell me at the time that I wasn't good. There was something there because, in my day-to-day existence, my life consists of talking trash. Even today, my best friend was on the phone calling me and he wanted to debate about something. I'm like, listen, dude, I'm not about to do this with you at this point in my life. But my whole existence day-to-day was you say something, I say something back. So I think I was pretty cool at being annoying, but I didn't know how to piece it together. I didn't know how to tell the story. So I would say they were terrible. But, I've had some friends that have told me, I'm here now, right? So there must have been something there.
There must have been something.
There must have been something.
I
Yes.
like it. So talk about the first Fed you remember. What's the big one? What's the first place that leaves a mark on you?
The place that I met Pete and Paul and Andy, it was called
HEW. Yeah,
Hardcore Extreme Wrestling. I didn't know that it was small at the time because it just felt so big and everybody there was really, really good. And so the reason why I give that federation the credit is because I felt like if I couldn't be good there, I wouldn't be good anywhere. And I learned my style there being around those excellent writers. Again, we were always in character. So if somebody did something to me or an attack at the show, I felt like they were attacking Jamar. And I took it personally. You know what I mean? I used to tear AIM, Instant Messenger, up.
There you go.
So, yeah, I would give that the credit. A lot of really good writers came out of there. A lot of writers that are far better than I could ever dream to be came out of that place, and they were good back then. And it was one of those things where, because I knew how to talk trash, I was able to get I make my mark, but I could never get over that hump of being like the guy, the world champion. And so it was the federation that pushed me to try to be as good as I could be.
It's where you broke in, you kind of learned the lay of land, and you got to write against great writers for the first time.
Absolutely.
So moving on from HEW, where do you go next?
Whew. If anybody is listening and I forget you, I'm so sorry. I'm 40 now. I'll be 40 next Wednesday, guys. I went to a federation called SCW or something to that effect. And it was run by a guy who had handled the character in HEW. And he was actually older than us at the time. He was like in his 30s or something like that. He was like, to me, I was like, oh my God.
He's old.
Dude,
yeah.
what are you doing this at this age?
Yeah.
You know?
I'll never be doing this at this age.
I'll never be doing this. Shouldn't you be having kids and married and all? But he ran it. Exactly. It comes back on you, man. But he ran the Federation. And the reason why I joined was solely because I just, in HEW, we waited a certain amount of time for a card. I wanted cards in between. I loved this so much that I just wanted to keep writing. And so I never wanted a day or a week or two to go by without Sean Stevens being on a card and competing against somebody. And also it was smaller. And so I was like, oh, this might be my chance to win a world title. And so, yeah, I went there.
You mentioned Sean Stevens. Was Sean Stevens your original Shawn Michaels ripoff character?
Yes, but his name was Ecstasy back then, and I spelled it with 3 X's. I don't know why.
Because everybody did. If there's an X, it's got to be 3.
I don't know why. I don't even think I was thinking like porn or anything on that point.
No.
I was young.
But if there's an S, there's got to be a Z. That's the 90s.
I just thought it was cool, man. And looking back, it wasn't, but it stuck. And so his name was that. And, maybe like about 2 or 3 years later, I was like, okay, I got to transition from this because it's kind of goofy. And I was like, I still haven't won a world title. So it's like, maybe I need to give him a name or a real personality or a backstory. So Sean Stevens came later. But yeah, it was that terrible name initially. So that's where Triple X comes from. That's
great, though. You can see where the Triple X comes from. It comes from their first e-wrestling name, which is
absolutely
a great homage. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, as I would transition to different feds, a lot of those same brilliant, amazing writers would transition with me. And so they would still refer to him as that because that's how they knew him. They knew him as Triple X. They knew him as Ecstasy. So it just stuck. And I was like, all right, if everybody's going to keep saying it, let's just go with it.
It's basically a nickname at that point.
Exactly.
And it's cool that after all these years, so many people I'm talking to on this podcast have started with the character and they've carried him 20, 30 years. And I can't believe how often it happens at this point.
Yeah. It's true. Again, it's something I never would have imagined for myself. I wouldn't imagine being back now. I mean, I have 4 children, like we talked about, right? 4 daughters. Life is hectic, but you miss it. You get that itch, and you just want to write.
It's a release. It's a getaway.
Yeah.
It's nice. So you're over there, and you're in your new Fed, and you're hanging out with the same writers you had written with before. What are you getting better at? What are you learning as you continue on? Are you finally reaching these better levels? Or are you talking to people and saying, hey, what is going on? Because, what you mentioned in the beginning was in character all the time. And I remember back in the day, that's how places were. There wasn't an OOC forum. And if it was, hey, I have to take a vacation or I have to do this. It wasn't social. Talk about getting used to those writers in a social setting and how they made you better.
So in that second Fed was when I started to become aware that, we're supposed to, even though we still cared about it and we were angry about things, we were supposed to be in character and we were supposed to be out of character. And so that was when I met some of those guys that I mentioned earlier, and we would actually talk and we would try to talk about things outside of e-Fedding as well. So it was one of those things where I got to pick their brains and I got to be humble and say, you know what, I really look up to you. I really admire how you do this. Like, what can I do to be better? And I think the one person there's a few people that come to mind, but one person that comes to my mind instantly is Paul Brisbane. He was a guy that just kind of almost took me under his wing. He's going to fuss at me for saying this because he's not going to agree. But the truth of the matter is, I really dug his style of writing, how he told stories, how he talked trash. And, I almost want to say I copied a lot of his style of doing things. Just his ability to tell these stories in a way where you close your eyes and you envision being there while being entertaining. And then I also became really good friends with somebody who tortured me in HEW, Pete Russo, Eli Flair, Poison Ivy. And he actually became really, really cool. He was really nice to me. And so he would always read little things. And he was somebody that I could, shoot ideas off of. And he even was so gracious enough to even align with me at a time where I wasn't a big deal at all. And so he kind of was another guy that took me under his wing, and he showed me the art of storytelling. So what I got in that second federation was confidence and the ability to be able to do more than just say you suck because.
So you talked about Paul Brisbane. Ironically, he's supposed to be the guest for next week's Efed podcast.
Nice. Tell him I said hello.
I don't know how that fell in order, but that'll work well.
I completely planned the whole thing. I promise. No. If every good thing that I've said about him, if he doesn't speak positively about me next week, I take it back.
I'll cut it out.
Yeah, please. Yeah, that's my boy. That's my guy.
So talk about what happens next in your Efed career.
While I was doing that federation, I was looking at the CSWA because that was a big deal for the circuit that we were in. And so it was like about 9 or 10, maybe less, maybe like about 6 or 7 feds. But we were in the fwrestling.com circuit, and CSWA was the biggest deal. They had these legendary characters ran by Chad Merritt, Stephen Thomas, just really smart, really well put together gentlemen. And I was never able to get in. And so I would be reading their shows or their cards, and I would see like Paul's character. I see Pete's character. I see like the character of like all of my friends, and I'm like, well, why am I not good enough? And I would feel like, yeah, let me in. Exactly. And so I didn't get in for years. So I thought that it meant that I wasn't good enough. And so, I mean, when I met Chad later on in life, I realized that, they get busy. They had a lot going on, but I thought I wasn't good enough. So it pushed me to want to get better. And so I went back to the feds that I was in, and I forced my way to becoming a world champion. Now it wasn't as big of a deal, and I could tell that it wasn't a big deal. It was like, me now understanding the territory system. Yeah. Like, I'm a world champion over here in the Northeast, but this is nothing compared to up north at the WWE or
national scale.
National. So I was happy to have finally won one. But at the same time, I wasn't satisfied. It didn't feel as big a deal as HEW with Paul winning the title and all of those guys. And so I just kept writing some more. And then my friend Andy Bloxham, who handles Zero, just a brilliant guy, one of my closest friends right now, he gave my information to a guy, Ed, and I can't remember his last name right now, and that's going to suck. But he was the owner of the CWL.
Okay.
And so at that point in time, I didn't know much about it, and I was actually going to turn him down. But, I checked the site out, and it was just like this amazing poser. It was like totally different from anything that we had done. I didn't have to use my imagination. It was right there in front of me.
Yeah.
And so Andy, then he had hit me up on Instant Messenger, and he was like, hey, did you get an invite to a Fed? And I was like, yeah. How'd you know? And he was like, yeah, I gave him your information. And so twofold, it did two things for me. It was like, oh, you really like me. You're my friend. Like, all right, cool. I have my wall up. Now we're good.
Yeah.
And then it made me feel like, oh, wow. Like, these people are good writers from different circuits. And this place is a big deal based off of, like, there was this one website that we all used to go to, and it was like a website dedicated to EFEDs, and it had like top 50s, and they had like all of these different handlers from all over. And so once I joined that federation, I became aware of that. And to see all of the hoopla around this Fed that I was in was just like, oh my God, this is a lot of pressure. It's time now. Like, the whole world's watching. Do
you remember that site?
The site, oh my God.
Was it Rough Cut?
No, it wasn't Rough Cut. It was, it had the word e-wrestling or something in it somehow, some way. And Pete or one of those guys, they'll know it.
Yeah. And you mentioned fwrestling.com. fwrestling.com, of course, is still alive and has a couple of feds running on it still.
I feel like if I didn't remember that one, somebody would put a hit on me. I'm just saying.
Shout out to Chad.
Yeah, shout out to Chad, the Godfather, actually, which is his name, which is what we call him. So yeah, do what you want with that information. I started realizing that federation was a big deal, and so I did join. And upon joining, they did things a little different because it was like a password that you need to put in, and it would take you to the backstage. And then in the backstage, people were discussing angles. And Ed Wilson is his name. And then Ed started to tell us what a storyline arc was. And I was like, what the hell? Am I smart enough to be here right now?
This is next level of e-fetting, yeah.
And then mind you, I'm dodging bullets as I go outside of my door, and then I'm coming into this. I'm just confused all over, man. I joined, and I decided I wanted to, somebody wanted to work with me. I mean, I can't remember who it was, but I do know that it was a few guys that I did know. Pete was there again. Paul was there. Andy was there. But we did not initially work together. For whatever reason, when we started to put our shows together and put them out, when I would look at that Efed site, like my character got a lot of love. So my trash talking style resonated with that group. And so the next thing you know, like really, really, really early in the game, I was like getting like title matches. And I just, people would like figure out my tag on Instant Messenger, and they would like reach out to me, and they, ask me for their autographs. I swear that happened once. I swear. Now I didn't do it, but it's the truth. And so I was like, it was just one of those things where it was like, this is really a really, really big deal. And so I competed there, wrote there. This was also the first storyline fed that I've been in. So I did, we, had our little predetermined finishes and stuff like that. So it wasn't so much as competition role play as much as it was telling stories. But still, even then, people really dug that character. And I think that's where I probably got the most confidence, where I was like, okay, I guess I'm pretty okay at this. So yeah, and I competed there until Ed's unfortunate untimely death. He passed away. And so, yeah.
That's it's an interesting concept or interesting story where you get recognition on a site, even though you had just joined a Fed, you were newer to it. And then all of a sudden you're getting the opportunity, you're getting the chance. All it takes is a couple of eyes and word of mouth, and you're a popular e-fedder. It's that easy, as long as you're good at what you do.
It really is.
So that's a great story too, and it's cool that you got to spend some time in the Fed and time with the Fed head before his, like you mentioned, untimely passing. What happened after that?
I then got an invite to the FWO, which was another big deal storyline, angle fed. And I got an invite. I got an email from Travis Beaven. And nice. I was just like, oh, my God, this is crazy. Because at the time of me being in the CWO, I became aware of the FWO and how big of a deal that federation was. And I went there, and same deal, man. Wasn't a world champion, but it wasn't because I wasn't good enough to be. I think it was because I didn't want anybody to think that I was selfish. So I never asked to be. I never said, hey, can I work with you, champion? But, there was like internet titles and tag team titles. And, on this site, again, I was getting so much love. I got virtually zero hate. I mean, it was a really good time. What I learned about that federation and what I liked about them was that, there was a system in place. And you knew who the writers were. You knew when the shows were coming out. You knew when you had to, have your stories done. And so everything was like really, really, really organized. It was awesome. It was an awesome experience.
That's cool. So it's an angle fed?
It's an angle fed, yes.
Yeah. So, and again, you're still around some of the same friends, same writers you've been hanging out with.
I am. But then, you meet so many other people, like just these amazing writers that write in a different style than what I'm used to. But they're telling these stories. It was just like this never-ending story that you were reading, and it was everywhere. At this point in time, I'm getting a little bit older, and my life is a little bit busier, and there's college and all these other things. But, I always found time to definitely make sure I was paying attention to what was going on in my Efed life.
That's awesome. So you did the RP thing and then into the angle thing. What was your favorite between the two?
I think it's always going to be RP because, again, like I just
Competitive
talk trash.
guy.
Like I love to talk trash. It is what it is. I love to see what the other person whoever my opponent is, like I love to, see what they have to say. And then, and it's so crazy because like I'll get a role play against one of my characters and it will be so good. And I'll just be like, oh my God, I don't even know how you respond to this. And it would consume my day. And, you're thinking about it while you're in class or work or whatever.
Line's not good enough. Yeah.
Yeah, that line's not good enough. And then you jot down one thing and you jot down another thing and you're like, this is going to be terrible. And then you sit in front of your computer and you put it together and it comes out really, really good. I love that challenge. That was awesome to me because do I think I was the best at roleplay? Absolutely not. There's so many people that are way better than I was, but to be able to compete with them was always a challenge for me. And I always loved, I don't know, I'm just a competitive guy, like you said.
Yeah, you find your niche in the hobby and you tend to stick with it. And it's great that you dabbled in both because, hey, more power to all players who play each and every way. Happy to see it.
Thank you.
So talk about after the FWO, what would you do next?
After the FWO, I just went back to Roleplay Fest. Okay. I missed it so much. You kind of come back and you have a more of a name. Yep. And so, some of the older guys that were
big deal,
the people that you looked up to, the big deals, still are guys. I love you guys. You're cool. But a lot of those guys, you go back, and you're like, hey, I'm different now. I'm ready now.
I'm with you.
And so feeling like I now understand how to tell stories and I could mesh that with the trash talking. I was ready to go. And so I came back. I had a chip on my shoulder. It was time. It was like, let's do it. Like everybody who used to bully me in these federations back in the day, do it now. Let's see. I have something to say.
See what happens.
And it sounds crazy, right? But that's just my mind. That's where I was. That's how I felt. And it was just like, let's get to it.
All it takes is a little bit of a hot streak and some confidence, and you write even better.
Absolutely. And so I had joined a Fed called EPW, ran by David David Brunk. He let me in. He was my buddy. We had back and forth in CSWA. I think I earned his respect. He had come in and he was a big deal. He had attacked our champion on the show, and I don't think it was like authorized by him. He came to CSWA. I was like the first person jumping out there, like, hey, no, that's not cool. What you did was not okay. He wrote his role play back. He was really good. I instantly knew that he was really good. But again, those are the situations that freak me out / drive me to be better. And so then I would respond and I would go back and I would read my response. I'm like, oh, you didn't crush me too bad. I hung. And then you say something else. And then I say something else. And he would always respond. And so, getting a little bit older and understanding like the human mind, you're responding because I'm annoying you, sir.
You said something that struck a chord.
I said something that struck a chord and you responded and you can't let me get the last word because I got you.
Yeah.
And so he's a good friend of mine. And so he'll laugh at that story. But I joined his federation, and at the time, Troy was the champion. And then it was Troy Wyndham from CSWA, who was considered the best trash talker in the world. And I hated that because I felt like I was the best trash talker in the world. He was there. A lot of those big characters, and they had shows like cards that were a little bit more frequent than CSWA. So I got there and I said, this is the place that I want to give my all to. I'm going to eliminate any distractions in terms of other feds. I'm going to be here. I'm going to try to do the best that I can. And Dave let me join, man, and which, was awesome of him. And he really supported me every step of the way through, I think my first match there was like a battle royal. And because I hadn't, I had probably taken a little break before I joined, our role play fans again. And so I was just I had so many ideas, and I think I won. And so when my character won that, I was just like, hit the ground running. And so there was like a hierarchy, and I wasn't there yet. But I worked towards it, and it was a gradual thing. And he was always just really supportive. If, my character lost a match and I had a question as to why, he would tell me. He was always just really upfront and straight with me. And that's why we're friends to this day, because we're the same way. He doesn't have to mince words with me.
Shout out to Brunk. He's really, really good people.
Very good guy.
Yep.
Good dad. I mean, just a good person overall.
He's my dad friend. That's what I call him.
Yeah, that's a good guy, man.
All right, so EPW Empire Pro Wrestling, you had a great run there, and I believe a record-setting title run.
Yes. So, I think the first year or so, I think I had a title match that I didn't win. Something happened. But whatever happened, it made me feel, I still felt insecure, like, oh my God, you can't win that big one. You know, like, you're never going to win the title and be respected. You're respected in a way as being almost there, but you're not there. You're not amongst that crowd. And so they would always tell me all these great things about myself and about, like, the things that I wrote, but I didn't believe it, because I was just like, if you've been world champion, you've been world champion, you've been world champion. Like, what's the difference? I'm not. So I really gave my all in terms of, like, writing to that federation, and I did eventually win a tournament called the King of the Cage, and which was a big deal back then. And then I won the title and kept it for like 2 years, man. Like
damn,
2 years straight, which, like,
in a role play fed.
In a role play fed.
That's incredible.
It was a good time. It was a good time. I was very happy about that run. That's probably what I think about the most when I think about all of this.
When you think about e-fetting, that's got to be the highlight.
That's the highlight for me.
That's
yes,
awesome.
Sir.
So you hung out in EPW. You were the man in EPW. Got your name. You were the champion for 2 years. What happens next?
Mm-hmm. We started doing joint cards with the NFW, which was another big deal. Their champion went against me, but it was under their umbrella. And, we role played against each other, and, that character did win the match. But I think I represented myself and EPW really, really well. And it was different tournaments here or there. I think mostly, though, I was just doing the EPW thing for so long, and it was so important to me. It's one of those things where at first it's like, I just want to be a champion. Yeah. And then when you're the champion, it's like, oh, I don't want to be transitional. Oh, I don't want to seem like a fluke. Oh, then you started finding all of these little reasons.
I'm getting close to the record.
Yeah. It's like you just find all these little reasons. Oh, okay, I beat this guy 4 times, but he's annoying, so he's going to keep coming back, so I can't let him. And so it was just like a lot of writing, and it got to the point where it was like draining a little bit, because it was like I cared so much. And so when my character lost the title, it was like this, it was something that I was like a little bothered by, because it's like, you've had it for 2 years, but it was also, at this point I'm an adult. I understand it's not real. But I also
for 2 years.
Had it for 2 years. That didn't matter. But it made me, I don't know. It just made me feel like relieved. I was like, okay, it's over with. Cool. Now I get to kind of relax, and I don't have to be in front of my computer obsessively every day. And so I did that. And I think maybe I did a Fed or 2 after that, but it was on a smaller scale. And then I kind of phased myself out.
Phased out of e-wrestling.
Out of e-wrestling. It wasn't because of for any reason. It was just that, I started to get older. I was having children. I didn't know how to balance it. I was married at the time. I just had so much to do. I was growing in my career. And so I found myself not giving my all to e-wrestling. And I said, if I can't give my all to it, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to gracefully bow out, because I didn't want to disrespect the hard work of Dave and all those cool people that I had met that were relying on me to be able to write.
It makes a lot of sense, and I think everybody takes they get to a point where they have to step away, and like you said, you get that itch, you want to come back, you miss it, and you want that competitiveness, and probably your case. And so, what drove you back to the hobby? When was it?
Ooh, I rejoined in December.
Just this year.
Just this year.
Wow, huge
Prior
break.
to that, I've not been doing. I think it's been about a decade where I just stopped. Well, I kept in touch with certain individuals. Absolutely, they become my friends, and then you have different social medias and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I never had a desire to do it, and so one day, for whatever reason, I don't know why, I ended up on the High Octane site, and I saw two names that I knew. And I was like, oh, this is Lindsay. I was like, oh, I talk to her all the time.
Lindsay
We're friends on
Troy
Facebook.
and Dan
We've known each other for years. Exactly, and Dan Ryan. And so even still, I think I was just checking it out because I didn't even know that I could be interested in it anymore. And so I was just checking it out, and they were actually going against each other. And Dave wrote this like scathing, like crazy role play where it was just like insult, real life. It just seemed like he was just. I was like, does he know he's talking to Lindsay? Like, because they're cool. I was like, I don't think he knows that that's who he's talking to. So he wrote it, and I was like, and so it made me reach out to him, and I was like, I don't know how I would ever respond to that. What in the world were you like? Wow, that gave me the itch to do this again, but I don't want to do it because I could never respond to that. And so I was walking through a hallway at work, going to do something, maybe going to get lunch or something. And I started thinking of responses. And I thought of another response and another response. And I said, hold up. Like,
there it is.
I could respond to that if I was her. I think I might want to do this. So then I started talking to him about it. And he was like really encouraging me to do it. We had talked about me potentially coming back before. And so he would try to talk me into like, things. And I just okay, I said that wrong. He wouldn't try to talk me into it. But if I was ever interested, he would give me information on it and, tell me what I need to know to join.
Get you connected to the right person, so on and so forth.
Exactly. Thank you. That's why I need you here, man.
No, Bronk is great for that. He's very encouraging of anything you want to do. He's a great friend, and honestly, he's one of the good people in e-wrestling. So,
absolutely. And so
I got to find a way to burn him before the episode's over, though.
Yeah, yeah. And so, he got me connected to Chris, and we exchanged numbers, and we started shooting ideas back and forth. And I think in January I was like, oh my God, what did I sign up for? I don't think I can do this. I'm scared. And then, he would text me and be like, hey, you're role playing in a week. And I'm like, oh, God, why did I do this? Why did I do this? Why did I do this? And so then I was going against a guy, and he wrote something, and I started piecing together mine, and I got it done in under maybe about 30 minutes. Just like I took some time during my lunch break. It was like, idea. And I was done. And then I put it up, and I remember being really proud of it. And I remember feeling like, okay, you're not as good as you were. I don't have that. Again, I'm a dad of four daughters. Like, I'm as soft as they come. My life is not anything resembling like the things that I grew up in. My life is dresses and, let's do the hair and let's do family activities. And so it's really hard for me to be mean to people. But yeah, it just is what it is. And so, but with that being said, I was able to channel that guy, and I'm okay with it.
You were able to bring back the itch. You were able to bring back the personality from 10 years ago. Even if you haven't hit your stride yet, the rust is breaking off, and you're enjoying your time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is. Yeah.
So that's awesome. And High Octane Wrestling at HOWrestling.com is a great place to be. Mikey Unlikely versus Kendricks coming up. Pay-per-view. I think by the time this airs, it'll have already happened.
Nice.
And you can catch Sean Triple X Stevens over there.
Yes. Hopefully I can win sooner or later. I don't know. It's a totally different circuit.
It's a great RP Fed. Really, really good talent.
It's really good, and they have a lot of really good writers. Sometimes I'm reading things and I can't believe what I'm reading. I'm just like, oh my God, these guys are so good. I don't know if I'll ever be able to compete to that level again. But it's fun. It's fun for sure, and they're really organized, and everybody's been really decent to me.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. And that kind of wraps up your story, so to speak.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, man. That was a lot of fun. It was really cool hearing from you, and obviously, from what I've heard from other people and knowing the name myself, you're kind of a legend in the hobby.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I do. Thank you again for just taking some time to chat with me. I feel really important and special right now, so I don't know if that makes a difference.
Well, before we go, I'm going to ask you all these Twitter questions and the Discord questions we got. So are you ready for those?
Absolutely.
Up first, it's your old friend Pete at UserPoets on Twitter.
Nice. Hi, Pete.
An ideal Fedding world, what would you have wanted to see from the Masked Violators?
Oh, wow. Paul and I, we had come out of like semi-retirement, and we had created these characters where they were just like cheesy and from Mexico.
Two unnamed guys, yeah.
Two unnamed guys. One was like a squeaky clean baby face. The other was a short, stubby, old school heel. And there was like a backstory behind it, and I don't know if I'm supposed to tell it. So, Paul, if you are mad at me, I do apologize. But you are a Seahawks fan, so swerve. I'm a 49ers guy, by the way.
There you go.
But the story was supposed to end with them actually not being the real masked violators. They were supposed to be two gentlemen who committed a crime in the United States, and they fled the country. Actually, I think they jumped the real masked violators and put their masks on and become them. So in a perfect world, I would have liked to be able to tell that entire story, because me and Paul had some crazy ideas, but we had got together at a point where we were full-blown adults with jobs, and we were working so many hours a day that we never got to really fully tell that story. So that's the one that I actually feel like it potentially got away from us, because if we could have told that story, it'd have been awesome.
That is awesome. Also from Pete, which match in the Tripp versus Eli series was your favorite and why?
That's easy. It was in a Fed that we were in called TCW, I think. Totally Complete Wrestling or something to that effect. They had really good cards, and they had a bunch of heels that were really awesome. I, again, joined another Fed that they were in chasing those guys because I wanted to get their respect, and I wanted to finally be able to beat him. And I had never beaten Pete until that point. I mean, still haven't, I don't think. I don't know. Pete, tell me. But I don't think I.
He likes to comment on the episodes with his critiques, so he will tell you.
Yeah. So I chased Eli, and we ended up having a match where, he had beat me a few times, and he had beaten Stevens a few times, and it was like, it's going to be a I quit match or something to that effect. And I was like, well, my character will never. So that's not going to happen. So we role played against each other, and he was really good, and I feel like I was really good as well. And I felt like he was the guy that was that one hurdle that I could never clear.
Yeah.
And so when I was done and it was time to do the tallies for the role plays, I really felt like I gave the Fed head a rough way to go. Like I didn't.
He's gonna
absolutely
should have
won.
Yeah.
He absolutely should have won, but I made you think twice about that.
Yeah.
And so the match was written in a way where it made my character, even in defeat, like he got over, because he really did not, like he was in a compromising position where he had to, but he didn't do it because he was in pain. He didn't quit because he, passed out. He did it because he was like, it was a chess move. I have to do this so that you don't break this bone so that I can come back. And I just thought that was so clever. And so even in defeat, that was the Tripp Eli match that I think was my favorite, because up until that point, I didn't understand somebody getting over Paul losing.
And you enjoyed the role play series. You enjoyed the match writing. You enjoyed the way the Fed presented it. I mean, it's an all around win.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So Pete's got some more questions for you.
Uh-oh.
Who's a character you never got to work with but you wanted to? And who's a handler you never got to work with but you wanted to?
I think Warren Fitzpatrick handled Deacon.
Yes.
Yeah, I never got to work with him, and I always wanted to, because when I got to CSWA finally, he was the guy that consistently beat Eli. He was the guy that was, he wasn't expected. He wasn't in that hierarchy of, Mark Wyndham, Hornet, Eli, those champions, Troy Wyndham, but he won the title. And when he won it, he carried it for so long and in such a prestigious way. And so I always wanted to work with him, and I never got an opportunity to. I think I did role play against his character before, so
but
never
worked with him.
We never got to communicate. We never got to really know each other. Other than that,
crazy how things turn to come around. I've met Warren this past year doing the Efed podcast. We met in person a couple times. He's a really cool guy, really nice, and now he's over where I'm handling at DefianceWrestling.com.
Nice.
So, great answer. I'm sure Warren, he's a listener of the show. He'll be excited to hear his name pop up.
Tell him I said what's up.
So, other than Eli, who do you consider Tripp's greatest opponent?
Good question. The first in EPW. He was a guy that, he was probably the most persistent person that I've ever dealt with out of character. And then in character, my character would beat his like over and over and over and over. And he would just keep coming back. And I'd be looking at Dave like, why do you keep giving him a match? And
he wants it.
It was like,
you're his hurdle.
He wants it. And he would always come to me out of character. And I have an idea with the first beat Tripp. And I'm like, no, I'm not. This is a roleplay fair, dude. I'm not like angling you to take my character's title. But he finally did win a cage match or something like that. And it was one of those things where it was deflating because I was like, dang, he got me. Am I falling off? But that was also how my character lost the title after 2 years. So he would be that other guy that was kind of just, yeah.
That's cool. The guy that finally toppled you was the one who tried so hard and then finally got
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great story.
Thank you.
At Stratford_Angel, I've been trying to get back in touch with FWO alum. Where did you all go after it ended? This is Jade Argent here.
Hey, Jade. After it ended, I went back to roleplay. I went back to the FWrestling.com circuit. That's my baby. That's where I knew everybody. And I wanted to show them what I had learned. And the guy that they essentially, sent to the FWO and all those other places, he came back and he grew up some. So, yeah, I went back to the roleplay circuit.
Good listener of the show, John Thompson at TW Combat. What do you say is your greatest accomplishment in the hobby?
Definitely winning the EPW world title and holding it for 2 years. I think that was a big deal. Prior to my character winning that title, Lindsay was a very respectable champion there. And so it was a big deal. Whoever was going to be that guy after her to carry the ball was going to have, they were going to have their hands full. And I think I was able to do pretty good.
No doubt. Good long runs.
Definitely.
So what would you say is your greatest disappointment in the hobby?
Letting the first family beat my character. No, my biggest disappointment, I don't know, maybe not being selfish enough in those FWO fets and the CWL. People would tell me that they thought that, I was a talented writer, but I never wanted to be selfish enough to say, hey, let me try to be champion.
Can I have the opportunity? Yeah.
Can I have the opportunity to be champion? Because I didn't want anybody to think I was selfish. But I think I could have, made that leap towards being a little bit bigger of a deal if I did.
And it's not even selfishness, it's confidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And finally from John, if you take away Father Time and both men in their prime, who's going to win, Chuck Norris or Bruce Lee?
Bruce Lee.
Easy answer, right?
Yeah, that's very easy, huh? Yeah.
Chuck, he already beat him on film.
Yeah, I was going to say Chuck's cool and everything, but come on now.
All right. At EWT's best customer, Megan, what's one thing you look back on in the hobby and you can say to yourself?
I could say, I don't know. That's a good question. Looking back in the hobby, I can say that I've learned to be patient. I've learned to not take things so seriously. The one thing that I would say to myself is to continue to try to be better. The hobby, one of the things that I didn't mention was that, I ended up being a journalism major in college, and, people in my real life would always comment on, how good of a writer I was. And I owe that to nothing but the hobby. So, I don't know. I hope I answered your question. I'm sorry. I rambled. Yeah.
Up next is Seth is Burns. Favorite people to work with in the hobby?
Pete Russo, Paul Brisbane, Dave Brunk. Those are my guys.
Least favorite people to work with in the hobby?
Wow, good question.
The first, because he beat you. No.
Yeah, and he's going to kill me because I don't remember his actual name. That's going to suck because it's going to sound like I'm being an asshole with his character being like my character's nemesis. But I really don't, and I'm so sorry. Dave, help me.
But he left an impression enough on you that you remember his character. You talked about him.
Stanton. His name is Mike. Mike. I'm sorry. There you go. Mike was probably my least favorite because he was just like, I don't know. He was persistent.
He was
at the time I was really busy.
The ankle dog.
Yeah, man. I'm sorry, Mike. You're cool though, man. Like I have no personal issues with you at all. Like you're my guy. Past all this.
All right. Up next is MDG. It's Warren. My favorite question for people who've been in the game for years. We all reminisce about stories we love. What's the one story with Stevens that you wish you could forget about?
That's a great question. Maybe, okay, so I think around the time in EPW when I had lost his title, I think because the 2-year run was like his second reign or something like that. I lost it initially like really quick, and I think I took him really dark. And it was just not the character. It was him being almost like gothic or something like that. And I had teamed up with Justin Boutron. I think I said his name correctly.
Yeah, creepy Justin.
Creepy Justin, the stalker.
Yes.
And it was another guy, and it was a good time because me and Justin got really close, and so I never want to not mention that. But I think for the character, I took him somewhere he didn't need to really be, and so maybe if I could go back, I would change that.
Justin's doing the same thing over at DefianceWrestling.com.
Yeah, Justin's my boy. Justin never wants to play 2K with me on Xbox, by the way, so I'm putting that out there. Justin's a jerk. No, he's a good guy.
Shout out to Justin. He is good people.
Yeah, good man. Good man.
Up next is Brunk.
Uh-oh.
Favorite handlers or characters of all time?
Favorite? That's a good question. Hi, David. Chad Merritt's Hornet. He had this aura about him. Eli Flair.
Hornet always wins.
Hornet always wins, yes. Eli Flair is one of my favorite characters. Poison Ivy, his manager, is one of my favorite characters as well. Paul Brisbane had a character by the name of Cyrus Blackshear, and he was it was like the first story that I really read from beginning to end, up until the point where the character actually died in the ring after finally winning the world title. And I just think that was freaking brilliant, not to mention all of his other characters that I love, but it was just something about that story. So I would say he's on my Mount Rushmore. Dan Ryan is definitely on my Mount Rushmore. I love Lindsay as well. She's an amazing writer. I think that's about it for me.
Hard to argue.
Yeah.
Who was the greatest EPW champion of all time? Also from Brunk.
Come on, man. Stop.
It's over. Call the show.
The first. And by the way, I don't know if you can see this. I'm doing finger quotes.
He's doing finger quotes. You can't see the finger quotes. All right.
I'm answering that question.
Best memories of the FWC days?
Just getting to meet a lot of the people once we all stopped taking it so seriously and started like working together a little bit. You know, a lot of these people are lifelong friends that I have to this day that I'm going to have forever, even if we've never even encountered each other. I know about their families. They know about mine. Just meeting really, really good people. That's what I miss the most about it. You know, it was a lot of fun, and it was a period of time in our lives where, you know, we had a lot of time and we could just go back and forth for days. But the most rewarding thing is just growing up and being able to still say some of those guys are my friends and girls. Hi, Lindsay.
Who are the handlers that got under your skin out of character?
Mike Stanton. I'm sorry again, Mike. It is what it is, man. Paul Brisbane back in HEW got under my skin. Pete Russo got under my skin more than anybody. I hated Pete for years, like before we became friends.
Buy Pete's book over at Amazon.com. One Chance, Legend of Valerian's Garden.
He sent it to me for free. I don't know if I should have said that, but I still owe him $20. So Pete, I'll send it to you. Send me your Cash App, man. I got you today. But yeah, Pete used to get under my skin back in the day. There was a guy, and I don't know his last name, but his name was Phil, and he handled a character that pretty much, in my mind back in that time, was a complete carbon copy. I don't know what's going on. Carbon copy of mine, and he was just like, he used to annoy me so bad, but he was actually a really good kid. So yeah, I think he was annoying probably more than Mike actually.
Finally, from Brunk. Do you regret leaving the Better Have Stats Facebook group? I already know the answer.
No, I hated that group. Listen, they just to tell you a little bit about that group, they say that they're about stats, but then they don't. When you actually like argue with stats, they make corny guy jokes.
Disregard.
Yeah,
It's
just not about what it's supposed to be about. And I'm really sorry about inviting you to that group, Bronk. I didn't know it was going to be like that.
If you're going to talk about it, be about it.
Exactly.
All right. Up next is Brock. Brock wants to know Chad Merritt versus Travis. And a winner has to open their old Fed. Who wins?
That's a question. Where do you got? Oh my God. You got Chad, and the only reason why I'm saying Chad is because Travis is a nice guy. I feel like Chad would put a hit out on me if I didn't select him. So there you go. Chad's the godfather.
There you go. If you were trapped on a deserted island with Brunk, Pete, Linz, and Warren, and you can only save one, who's it going to be and why?
Okay, can I ask you who asked that question?
Yeah, this is Brock.
Dang.
Brock is Token Weed, formerly, I believe, of
I know.
FWF. Yeah, okay.
I remember him. Okay. And so, okay. Who saved?
Yeah, who are you going to save between Brunk, Pete, Linz, and Warren? You can only save one. Who's it going to be and why?
I'm sorry. Brunk, I'm sorry, man. It has to be Pete. Like, I've known him since like 97. That's his he sent me his book for free. I'm sorry.
He doesn't have to pay that $20 Cash App.
Exactly.
Why didn't you pick Linz? Is his next question. He called it.
I don't know. Lindsay's cool, man. Lindsay's a really good friend of mine too. I don't know if we were as close when we were writing back in the day, but I think social media has brought us really close together, and I feel like she's a genuine person. So the only reason, Linz, that I did not pick you is because I've known Pete longer, and I don't know, right?
Finally, from Brock, what's one thing you remember about the CWL?
The poser, how organized it was. Like, we had a card a week, and we did not miss that deadline. I was introduced. You said one thing. I'm giving the whole story. I was introduced to a bunch of characters in a different circuit that I wasn't used to, and so I think just that.
And up last, we've got Linz. Linz has a couple questions for you as well. Besides Brisbane, what former handler who has been away for a while do you want to see get back into the game, and what former handler needs to stay gone forever?
Dang. See, those are the questions. That's the reason why I wouldn't save you, Lindsay, because you'd be asking me too many questions.
Yeah, she'd be killing you on the island after you answer the question
She'd be killing me on the island. Absolutely. Who should come back? I don't know. I legit don't know. I would love to see maybe the people like Travis Beavan or something like that. I would love to see him right again. I would love to see Chad even, or I don't know, one of those two, because they were legendary. What
story are you looking forward to telling in High Octane Wrestling, and what's one character you're really looking forward to working with?
I want to work with Lindsay in High Octane at some point because we've never really had the opportunity to work together. I think the story that I want to tell is that of a guy who was on top of the world when he left and came back, and he's an old man now, and he can't hang. And you're no longer the most physically gifted wrestler, right? So what are you going to do? How are you going to survive? And so I want to kind of tell the story of him figuring that out.
It's the evolution of the character. It's the evolution of the handler. So I think it's a good story to tell, and I'm excited to see it. HOWrestling.com.
Yes.
Okay, get the plugs in. One character you're really looking forward to with is Linz. And the story, you mentioned that as well. How are the 49ers looking this year?
That's a good question. Who asked that one? No.
That's Linz. This is all Linz. But let me ask you, let's dive a little deeper because I'm a football guy. Is Jimmy G your guy or no?
Jimmy G is my guy, but the only reason why Jimmy G is my guy is because I'm just so loyal when it comes to the 49ers that even if common sense says this doesn't work because he's in the uniform, it just is what it is. You're my guy until you're no longer my guy.
You believe it.
I believe it. I believe it.
I was an Andy Dalton apologist for 10 years. You don't got to tell me.
I can dig it, man. I understand. I understand. Every time Jimmy drops back to throw a pass, my heart is in my throat because I think it has the potential to be an interception.
Or a touchdown.
But do I want him as my quarterback? Absolutely. I think I did jump on the Sam Darnold bandwagon a little bit, where I felt like he would be really good under Kyle Shanahan, and so I would love to see it. But
I'm a big Sam Darnold fan. I thought he was great when he got drafted, and I think that he's just been under Adam Gase, and otherwise he's a great quarterback. So I think there's something waiting to be unleashed there. I hope he realizes it, whether it's in San Francisco, New York, or wherever. But I think he's a great quarterback as well.
But to answer her question, I see a lot of teams around us getting better. And for as good as Kyle Shanahan is and John Lynch as a pairing, they don't take risks. And I've seen the Rams take risks that put them in the Super Bowl. And we got there last year organically, and I'm thankful for that. But, I think we might have gotten worse. With Jimmy losing his confidence, with Sherman, losing the step and not being here anymore. Gone, yeah. And so I just think that I'm not confident that we are going to the Super Bowl. I'm not confident that we have a playoff spot locked up. And, let's have this conversation again after free agency.
Yeah,
and
see what happens.
See how I feel. And the draft, yeah.
It hurts seeing J.J. Watt go to Arizona, though, for sure.
It's just like, where are they finding this money, man? Every time there's a big free agent or there's somebody who's cut or, they find a way. And it's just like, why can't my team do that?
1 second they're talking about cutting Chandler Jones for money, and next second they're signing J.J. Watt. So
exactly.
I don't get it.
Exactly.
Right. Sorry, Linz. I didn't mean to hijack your question. I like football.
Yeah, I love it too. I'm sorry, Linz.
Would you ever give angle fetting another go?
No. Not because I don't like it, but because of where I am in my life. I don't think that I would have the time to be as consistent as you would need to be in an ankle fit. You need to always be in constant communication with somebody. You need to be planning, arcs out. And I don't think that I have the time for it. Does that mean that I don't love it? Absolutely not. I absolutely love it. I love it the same as I always did. I wish I did have the time for it. My goal is to figure out a way to be rich in a few years so I don't have to do all the things that I have to do. Well, yeah, that's another thing.
Hey, if we could all be rich, we could just eat Fed all the time. It'd be great.
Right.
All right, word association time, and then we're out of here. You ready?
Okay, I am.
All right, stalker.
Scary, creepy guy that hides in closets. Throwback to the 1980s or whatever. But just such a classic character.
I love Justin.
Yeah.
Ice Tray.
The GOAT. Just the GOAT jobber. Like, he's just a character that's like a joke. And Paul wrote him so well, man. He's like Vanilla Ice, but he would win matches. Like, I remember Brunk told me, like, Paul and I, we had an idea to work together. We always wanted to really just dive deep. And so we wrote out an angle where Ice Tray actually beat Triple X in a match, a non-title match. And Brunk was like, no, you can't do this because you're my champion. Blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, nah, it has to happen. And he won the match because Triple X was holding on to him while he was trying to escape the cage and his chain popped because his chain was fake.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, he's an amazing character. I love him.
The First.
Annoying. But he is the Joker to Steven's Batman.
Not only annoying, but persistent.
Persistent. Just knew how to get under my skin and just... Yeah, a really good foil.
Joey Melton.
Mr. Lindsay Troy. Steven is probably one of my favorite writers. And to see him transition from Mark Wyndham, which was a totally different character than Melton, was a really good thing to see. It kind of solidified what I already knew about him as a writer. Like, he can do it all.
Hornet.
Never loses.
Always wins.
Always wins. Hornet Splash. Death Drop. Deathlock.
Listen, before I started this podcast, I didn't know who Hornet was. And if I know one thing between 65 episodes, it's that Hornet always wins.
Hornet always wins, man. And, not for lack of trying. I tried as hard as I could. I think I probably gave my all. Like, I tried. I wanted to defeat Pete before, at one point in time. I wanted to defeat Paul. I wanted to do all these things. But when it came to Chad, it was like, if you're able to beat him in his Fed of all places for his title of all, man, you're the man.
Kodiak Vic Creed.
Crazy. Big guy. Scott Steiner. That's what I think of when I think of that character.
Big Papa Pump.
Yeah.
High Flyer.
Ran into that character in the FWO, and Tom is a big deal. He's just, that's what I think of when I think of that character. I think of the handler and just how big of a deal he is.
Tom's good people. I met him as well. He's over at DefianceWrestling.com, one of the Fed heads. So. Yeah,
Tom, I'm telling you, like, he's an amazing writer. He's from that other circuit, and I've seen him transition to the role play side as well, and he's just really, really good.
Also over at HOWrestling.com as
absolutely
High Flyer. Flying Frenchie.
I remember him from CWL. I believe if it's not CWL, it's definitely FWO.
It's FWO, definitely.
It's FWO, okay. Yeah. And I remember not really being that big of a fan of him. Sorry,
Kevin.
So sorry, Kevin. I'm sorry. Not that he wasn't good, because the character was really popular. It just wasn't my cup of tea.
Sure, and that's the way e-wrestling is. It's the same way as wrestling. Everybody has a style. Everybody has something they like to read.
I'm so sorry, Kevin.
Deacon.
When I think of Deacon, I think of prestige. Like, he just was the way the character, they would write these legendary entrances when he would come to the ring for his matches, and it just always felt like a big deal, even if it wasn't a title match. he just felt like the ultimate baby face, and just, you can't
he's
get
your
him to break.
Undertaker.
He's your Undertaker. Not during the ministry, but
but he's your guy. The gimmick is bigger than the title. The character is bigger than a championship, so to speak.
Absolutely, I agree.
Dan Ryan,
the best handled big man wrestler that I've ever encountered in my life.
Scary.
If we could talk about the handler, I mean, Bronk is he's been doing this for so long, and, just even knowing his commitment to his son and his family and all of the stuff that he has to do for him to be that good, having to juggle all of that, it's just like, dude, you're amazing. And so he's the single reason why I'm even doing this right now, because Dan Ryan, that character, is just handled wonderfully.
Lindsay Troy.
Lindsay, the most spunky-est, kick-ass, I'm not going to take no for an answer, walk into a room full of men and,
take over.
Everybody respects her. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody respects her. I think Lindsay Troy is an amazing character. I think Lindsay writes her very well. She does a great job of meshing between, trash talk and telling stories. I know about her characters' relationships, family, the connection and tie to Dan Ryan. I think it's a legendary character, and there's a reason why she's been around for as long as she has.
What about Lynn's personally?
Oh, that's my girl. She's cool, man. Lynn's is a sweetheart, hard worker. Again, just like the character Lindsay Troy, right? She's spunky. She'll let you know if she doesn't.
It's Lynn's
like
to 11.
It's Lynn's to 11, exactly. But she's a really good person. She's somebody who's always going to reach out if there's something going on with one of my children and I'm asking for prayer. She's always going to reach out on a birthday. When I proposed to my fiance, she reached out to me. She's just a really good person. Never had the opportunity, the pleasure of meeting her personally, but I feel like I have.
Yeah, that's a great thing about Efeding.
Yeah.
And finally, your time on the Efed podcast. How's it been?
I really enjoyed myself. I don't know if I rambled too much. I do apologize for that. I am a little tired. But I think that you're amazing, man. You're right. I mean, you ask great questions and you're really engaging. And
thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
Really thankful.
I appreciate that very much. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed getting to know you. I enjoyed getting to know the handler behind Sean Stevens, character who's a legend in the game. Excited to see him back in High Octane Wrestling in 2021. Excited to see the story you're willing to tell, and I'll be following, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Have a good day, okay?
All right, guys, that was a blast. I want to thank Jamar for coming on the show. It was so much fun talking about Sean Stevens, how he got started, how it evolved, and where he is today over at High Octane Wrestling. That's a big surprise that he's back in the game, and I think that people are going to take notice and check out his work today.
100% fantastic interview. And once again, head on over to patreon.com, A, to get that interview early, and B, to get the Patreon exclusive Egg Bandits interview that is more XXX than the interview with Sean XXX Stevens.
We've got the Stevens interview, which was a blast. I had a really good time talking to Jamar. And we've got the Egg Bandits interview going up unedited over on patreon.com/Efed Podcast, because honestly, it was scheduled to be this episode, but due to circumstances beyond our control, we can't air it on regular airwaves. So if you want to check it out, patreon.com/Efed Podcast is the place to go.
Indeed, as cheap as $3 to get the exclusive Egg Bandits interview.
Thanks to Jamar once again. Thanks to everybody for answering this week's Efed Podcast question of the week. Check out the new one over on Twitter or in the Discord, and we'll answer it here next week on the show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks to our sponsors for sponsoring the show. And, of course, Brian, thanks to you for co-hosting with me once again.
Oh, thank you for having me, sir.
For Brian, I'm Mikey. This is the Efed Podcast, where the wrestling is written but the characters are real.
The Efed Podcast, only on the Untitled Chapter Network, presented commercial free on Patreon.